Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another video. And I know it's been a while since you guys have heard my beautiful voice. The reason for that being that, unfortunately, due to some scheduling issues, there was a forfeit for my week 3 match. I got the forfeit win, so I did, come out on top, I guess you could say. But unfortunately, no match was played, so I did not play that game. And then just been kind of busy. Haven't really had a lot of time to sit down and record and a lot of hustle and bustle and stuff like that. I was house sitting for a few days. Um, I actually probably could have recorded this during that time, but I didn't. So now I'm just now kind of getting back into like the flow for like recording and stuff like that. So I'm kind of behind like a couple weeks, but that's the reason. Part of the reason why I've had haven't had an upload is largely due to the fact that one of my matches just basically didn't exist. But so we're looking back. This is on our week 4 match that we are looking at against Snake and matchup on the screen and pretty interesting matchup. I think we have a sand team obviously that obviously has a lot of effect on speed and how you build, and then also the iron bundle, which kind of counters the Tapu Koko as well. So I'm going to look at the team that I brought for this week. All right, and here's our team that we had prepped for. First up, we have our Ferrothorn rocking the Rocky Helmet Max Defense. Basically, this is our Dracovish check. Very dangerous Pokemon, regardless if it's running like Band, Scarf, or even like Sandstream. It's going to hit really hard. Ferrothorn's really the best check we have, obviously. Being a grass type, having that good resistance. Tanky enough. And then the Rocky Helmet plus Iron Barb chip going to go a long way in just sort of wearing it down, basically not allowing it to just hit as hard as it wants. Would have to run like protective pads and therefore kind of limiting its power in that case. And then obviously the body press that's going to hit a lot of my opponents seem hard. Things like Excadrill, Tyranitar, solid neutral damage to uh, Dracovish, and things like Rotom Heat, solid damage all around. The Gyro Ball is there mainly for obviously the faster mons. Your Mega Diancie hits Mega Diancie really hard if it wants to switch in to kind of Magic Bounce us. We can Gyro Ball that. A Dragon Dance, Salamence, anything along those lines. Hit those hard with Dragon Ball. Leech Seed so we can get some passive recovery. Pretty easy to seed my opponent's team because they don't have a grass type, and then their best switch in to bounce back a Leech Seed does not want to take that Gyro Ball. And then Stealth Rocks in our last spot because we want to get some chip on my opponent's team. Chip down at things like the Rotom Heat in particular. Also get like chip on a Iron Bundle that doesn't have boots. So just solid defensive mon, and mainly into that Dracovish, kind of help check that mon as well as just providing good overall bulk and hazards. The usual stuff that Ferrothorn does. Has been doing it for a long time. And next up, we have our Mega Gallade. Really, really good into my opponent's team this week. Um, very sort of a very fighting and psychic weak team. Close combat hitting, Tyranitar, uh, Tyranitar Excadrill really hard, does really solid damage to things like Mega Diancie and Rotom Heat, and then the Zen Headbutt checks the Nidoqueen that might want to come in on a close combat. Ice Punch in the last, or not the last slot, sorry, in this third slot, mainly for that Salamence, basically, with Justified, not Justified, sorry, Justified is the pre-Mega ability. With Inner Focus being Mega Glade's ability means I am immune to that Intimidate. So a, Salamence coming in that's not scarfed or anything along those lines. Basically, we can just ice punch it real quick and kill it. Ice punch always kills Salamence, then you need a triple axle. And then Shadow Seek in the last spot just to kind of pick up some sneaky kills on my opponent's team. They have a lot of speed potential, like I said, with the sand. So things like Excadrill, Dracovish, and the sand, we want to be able to kind of revenge those if they're on low HP. And then we're running basic, simple max Jolly because we want to be able to at least speed tie with Diancie in the cases, the time it comes out. Um, we don't want to make sure that we are able to at least speed tie it. Next up, we have our Gligar, just another solid defensive Pokemon. Also, another Pokemon that is sand immune, which is kind of nice. Don't want a lot of our Pokemon to be chipped down very heavily by the by sand, obviously. Uh, it's also like just a solid check to like Excadrill, kind of make sure that Ferrothorn doesn't get worn down by that. It can also help check Rotom Heat, Nidoqueen a little bit. If Nidoqueen obviously can have Ice Beam, but like a slower Nidoqueen, we're faster than it. Or if it just doesn't have Ice Beam and it's kind of just rocking like Dual Stab or something like that, if it's a more defensive support set. Um, Tyranitar as well, other mons like that. Just switch in. Earthquake is really good into my opponent's team. We have the Roost. We have the Toxic mainly like for baiting in that Rotom Heat. If it wants to try to switch in on the Earthquake or even on the U-turn to try to counter the pivot, we can Toxic it, and then obviously U-turn for that pivot. Roost to keep us healthy. And we went max special defense just to kind of better handle the Rotom Heat or even like a Mega Diancie. Eat those hits as best as possible. We don't really need a lot of physical bulk to deal with the Excadrill, especially if it's not like Swords Dance or anything along those lines. We're not going to need a lot of HP to deal with it. So, or sorry, not a lot of physical defense, should I say. Our next mon is our Tapu Koko, who's a pretty interesting matchup this week. It's really good into a handful of my opponent's Pokemon, primarily the Celesteela, which is a very bulky Pokemon, hard to deal with. Goodness Salamence as well. It's faster than Mega Diancie, so it can help pick it off. But obviously, defensively, my opponent has some pretty good Pokemon into us, which is why we're running Nature's Madness. Basically, hit stuff like the Excadrill. Um, Tyranitar can be very bulky, even if we have super effective damage into it, with something like Assault Vest. Um, Also, Nidoqueen, Mons like that. Um, Rotom Heat as well, resist both of our stabs. So any of those mons I wanted to try to switch in, we could catch them on a switch with the Nature's Madness and do a little bit of damage to them, basically. Discharge, electric stab, hit Diancie, hit Celesteela, get a chance for paralysis against those as well. And then Roost and U-turn. Basically, we're kind of running a bulkier set, as you can tell by the EVs. Almost max HP with just enough speed to be faster than Mega Diancie. And then the rest put into special attack, U-turn to pivot. This was also kind of a check to Rotom Heat. Rotom Heat was actually a pretty problematic Pokemon in my team. When I was prepping, I knew that its stab combination was not easy for me to wall. A lot of mons that want to switch into the electric move don't want to eat the fire move, and a lot of mons that switch to the fire move don't eat the electric move. Coco kind of was that middle ground where it doesn't care about the electric move, and then the fire move, I can roost it off. Obviously, overheat, lowering Rotom special attack means I can switch in, roost it off, kind of deal with that. Also, being immune to Thunder Wave is really nice. So that was kind of the thought process behind the Coco, especially making it a little bulkier. And then heavy duty boots because we want to be able to pivot as much as possible on potential hazards for my opponent. They do have good hazard setters. And we have our Milotic rocking a full special defensive set with the heavy duty boots obviously switching in and out when we need it. Scald, Mirror Coat, Recover, Flip Turn. Basically, this was sort of not really a bait set, but really good check to Iron Bundle. Basically, like non specs bundled has a hard time breaking Milotic. Eating up the freeze dry, like max special attack, freeze dry, I think like topped out at like 38% or something along those lines. Um, don't remember all the calcs off the top of my head. It's been a few weeks, but yeah, I knew it didn't do a lot, and it would have to be specs. And we like 100% always lived specs anyways, like from full. So or even like after a little bit of chip. So I knew we were good there. We want to be able to mirror coat that, kind of limit it. Also help check Diancie, check maybe a potential special Tyranitar, special Salamence, any potential special threats my opponent has, as well as also kind of help deal with the Rotom a little bit, switch into the overheat, get that special attack drop, and we're not taking as much damage from the electric move. And then recover, flip turn, very basic pivot stuff. We went competitive. Probably should have went Marvel Scale this week. Competitive really only mainly had value for something like Salamence Intimidate or a Mystical Fire drop on the switch into Milotic. Kind of the only thing we needed that for to get the competitive boost off. But we stuck with it. Obviously, I think having the Marvel Scale would have been a little bit better, seeing as that Rotom loves to kind of uh, status stuff with Will-O-Wisp and Thunderwave, but it's not what we went with. So kind of, a regret, I guess you could say. And then we have our last but not least, our King Gambit, rocking the air balloon. Great way to check things like potential Tyranitar, that like its only move it can hit us with is Earthquake. Also, obviously, Excadrill, being able to force those Mons to have to use other moves to hit us. Knockoff, obviously really strong. It's my opponent's team. It's always strong. The only mono on their team that, obviously doesn't care about knockoff, doesn't want to eat an Iron Head. Sucker Punch in the last spot. Of course, like I said, my opponent has a fast team. So we want to be able to sucker punch that kind of stuff. And then packing the Stone Edge, really and truthfully, that's just for the Rotom Heat. I could have put SD here, but I knew SD um, wasn't going to get a lot of chance to kind of Swords Dance because basically, if a Pokemon knocks out my Air Balloon and I Swords Dance on that turn, then we were forced kind of forced into 50-50s. So I decided just to rock no Swords Dance. Enough speed here, I believe. I think this might outspeed Min Speed Celesteela. Like I said, I don't remember. It has been a little bit. Maybe not Min Speed Celesteela. This speed was here for a reason, obviously. More than likely a min speed on a bulkier Pokemon to be able to make sure that we can revenge kill it pretty easy without having to rely on Sucker Punch. Um, and then we have Supreme Overlord. Um, Defiant was possible because once again the Salamence, but Supreme Overlord being put in that last spots where we can clean up my opponent's team. Um, Kind of late game Sucker Punch stuff down, especially if my opponent has choiced Pokemon. They're less of a threat when you can force them to attack you essentially. But that's the team that we brought this week. Pretty strong overall. Like I said, my opponent has a really good team, a lot of speed, a lot of tricky mons. Rotom Heat was very, very tough for me to deal with in the prep. So we're going to look at that match. All right. Here we go with our match. So obviously, we do a little bit of commentary here, post game commentary. Try to explain myself as we go through the match. Looking at my opponent's team, it's kind of the Pokemon I mainly expected. I thought Celesteela would come. I thought it was really good into my team. Uh, my best way of hitting it really is the Coco, and my opponent's team is good into Coco. Also, one other thing I didn't touch on in my team building, I decided not to bring Dragapult this week because of Tyranitar. With Pursuit being legal, I really didn't want to um, run the Coco. No, sorry, the Coco, the Dragapult. Polt is decent into my opponent's team, but they just have a lot of mons. I can't spam dragon moves because they have a bunch of steel types and a fairy type. And then I can't spam ghost moves because they do have the Tyranitar. I do feel like an important thing was like Scarf Coco. I keep saying Coco. Sorry, Scarf Dragapult was faster than I believe Adamant Drill in Sand. So that's like like a cool thing that it could have came was to kind of help check these faster threats. Booster bundle is also faster than it. So I just felt like it was not a good bring into my opponent's team this week. It would have had to have been like a really specific set. I think I would have figured I was going to get more value out of some of my mons. So we do see the Rotom Heat, problematic Pokemon, obviously, like I said. No Celesteela, no Nidoqueen. I kind of expected those to come. Really, my opponent could have brought any of their Pokemon, and I think it would have been really good into my team. But we'll get into it. We lead our Gallade. The main reason I led Gallade was because it was good into everything but Rotom Heat, basically, or Diancie, because then that forces I'm forced to switch in that situation. I'm pretty sure close combat doesn't kill. But like Tyranitar wants to set stand, cool. Dracovish, I can kind of scout for the Dracovish, basically. Excadrill wants to come in unless it's Scarf, but it really shut down the Tyranitar switch in. I'm pretty sure I eat a hit from Bundle and probably KO it with close combat. But it also gave me, like I said, a chance to scout some of these mons as well. Scout if the Dracovish is Scarf, scout if the Bundle is booster, scout if it's maybe Specs or Scarf, something along those lines. Basically, just give me options to scout my opponent. I decided to go into the Gligar here because my opponent is Probably not clicking Volt Switch, but an Overheat I can eat that. I can eat that, and then a Will-O-Wisp. Not the best, but if I had to pick a Pokemon to get burned, it would be Gligar. Like I said, I'm not Marvel Scale, Milotic. Obviously, my physical tag is going to get burned, and switching into Ferrothorn doesn't make any sense. And then even like the Coco, don't want to get it burned either. So I go with the Gligar. I'm trying to like pivot with this as well as spread Toxic. So we do see the Willows come out. That's perfectly fine. I decided to click the Toxic here, and the reason why was I wasn't sure if this was some sort of setup set. Um, no clue if it's choiced or not. Don't know if it's just a pivot set with boots. But if it wants to stay in and try to overheat, I can just toxic it, get that chip on it, and kind of roost off with Gligar on the next turn, and then pivot around if I need to. But we see the bundle come out. Makes sense. Want to kill this mon as fast as possible. We see that it is not booster, likely relying on our own electric terrain to boost it. But I immediately go on to Milotic. I knew I can scout for the specs here. Um, like I said, I know I live one. I can live two freeze dries easily. We see the flip turn out, does no damage. Rotom Heat comes back out. We don't want to let you move, so we pivot back in the Gligar, and then we see the trick, and we see that this is Scarf. Now, once again, I knew Rotom offensively it doesn't six on my team, but this is where the problems with with Rotom came into play was the Will-O-Wisp and the trick, just putting a lot of pressure on my Mons because basically crippled my Gligar at this point. And I think my best switch into that would have been maybe try to do the read with the Gallade, or potentially go into the Tapu Koko. Getting a Scarf on Koko would not be bad into my opponent's team necessarily. It kind of limits what I can do with it. But removing our Eviolite kind of sucks. We're less bulky, but we hit the U-turn and we get in our Milotic, which is good because once again, this forces my opponent to make a decision. We eat the freeze dry. Like I said, this 38%. I think that's the max roll. I could be wrong, but we mirror code it. We drop it. Now that's one big threat that's gone from us. Basically, the set worked as it's supposed to. Mirror code it, drop it. We recover in the face of Tyranitar. We see that we are faster than it, so this is not probably a min speed Tyranitar. We see power up punch, potentially dangerous. Flip turn out. I could have tried to scald it, but I didn't want to take any more damage from it. Go into our I'm not our Corviknights because of the name Corvus Corax. But I U-turn here, get a little bit of chip, and this is to scout for Ice Punch. Now, of course, this does put me going into my Ferrothorn. If it did power up punch again, I would at least get some chip on it, and then I would say, okay, maybe it can't touch Gligar, so I go back into Gligar and kind of just wear it down. And like I said, Gligar's kind of ran its use at this point. It's just a pivot mon. I don't have hazards on it, so I don't need it to set hazards. I don't have the fog on it either. Which is also something else. I didn't run a hazard rule on this team. I wasn't sure if my opponent could run hazards, but I also know I was running like a bunch of boots. I also had balloon on Gambit, so I was immune to spikes. So I didn't know if I would really need. Actually, I'm pretty sure if I recall correctly, I think Snake's team doesn't have a spiker. Pretty sure it's all rock. Actually, that's a lie. I know Diancie has spikes. But I know for the most part, it was setting rocks, and I knew my team did not care about rocks. I have three mons that resisted. I have boots, whatever. So we do see the ice punch. We do get a little bit of chip on it with the double Rocky helmet. We see the switch out, which is completely fair. We switch as well because I did not want to eat a power up punch, even though that would have effectively, basically, sideline Tyranitar for the rest of the game. I didn't want to risk losing any more health on Ferrothorn. I need as much HP as possible. So I pivot into the Gligar on a potential Earthquake, U-turn out here. I think in hindsight, there's a world where the correct play there is maybe too toxic to Rotom. Just eat the hit with the Gligar. We do go out though into our Milotic. We see the overheat come out, so it does basically nothing. We see a trick, gets rid of our heavy duty boots. That's not the end of the world. Will-O-Wisp here. Once again, sucks we don't have the Marvel scale. We do get a crit on the flip turn. Not really that important. But some chip regardless. Scald might have been a better play. But I wanted to pivot because I thought this thing was going to Volt Switch. So we get our Toxic here. Overheat miss. Not really, doesn't really matter. This thing is special attack. Toxic was really free there too because Excadrill is like the only mon that can come in on it. Diancie hasn't Mega Evolved yet, so it doesn't have Magic Bounce. We go back out into our Milotic. Once again, we don't have Marvel Scale, so we can't deal with this Pokemon the best. I Scald here just to see what it wants to do. I figured that it was a Sand Rush set, more than likely, so it wasn't like banded off the rip. And if it was, I would figure that out and get some chip on it. We see that as substitute leftovers. Pretty sure we click flip turn here because we're not too scared of whatever it can do. Go into our Gallade, and this basically opens up a free kill. I haven't been pivoting. I've been pivoting very defensively just because I want to wear it on my opponent's team. And I know they don't really have any immediate setup threats that I'm super scared about. Obviously, there's like sets from Diancie and stuff that are potentially scary. We've weakened the Rotom pretty well. Tyranitar's had obviously been weakened earlier. So I go out into my Gallade, basically force my opponent to either stay in and switch or switch. They stay in with the close combat. Cool. My opponent's Sand Setter is dead. We also obviously know that this is not Smooth Rock, as we could have told earlier by the amount of sand turns. So Diancie comes out. I don't want to stay in against it. I go into my special check. We see that this is the Iron Defense set. Now, originally when I was team building, um, King Gambit looked really good into Diancie, especially on the balloon, because I knew Mystical Fire wasn't. I don't think pretty sure Mystical Fire doesn't OHKO, and also it would have to be like Calm Mind or something. So we always had the chance to pressure out Diancie early. The idea of it being Iron Defense was in the back of my mind, and the set came. So that was obviously a very dangerous set. I decide to. I'm pretty sure I Scald here. Yeah, try to fish for a burn, weaken it a little bit. Obviously, it gets the sand defense special defense boost, so it doesn't take as much damage. But I do a hard switch here because I don't want to eat the body press, which does come out on the flip turn. I want to preserve this a little bit so I can kind of deal with mons like Rotom better. Unfortunately, the body press does too much, and we do lose our Gligar there. It's not the end of the world. Um, I didn't know if this thing was max speed yet, so I didn't go into my Gallade. I didn't want to eat a body press into Ferrothorn and weaken it anymore. Obviously, I can't bring out Gambit, so I'm forced to bring out my Coco here and discharge. Does a decent amount of damage. I know this thing is not extremely specially bulky, and it also doesn't have any more no more sand turns. I knew it wasn't extremely specially bulky because with sand boost, it still took a decent chunk from Scald. Diamond Storm does not do enough to kill us. Excadrill comes out. Now, I didn't want to over predict here and get in my own head. It got the Diamond Storm boost as well, so it's at max defense +6 before this turn. So there's a good chance that I'm not able to kill with Mega Gallade. So I just clicked discharge again, even though I knew Excadrill was pretty free. See, it's leftover, so I know I can pivot on the U-turn, and I go into Ferrothorn. This right here is a big misplay by me. The reason why is I need as much. I've been talking about it. I need as much HP on Ferrothorn as possible. If this thing earthquakes, it's not going to do a lot because this is not a like band life orb or like soft sand. It only does a solid 31%, but that's 31% less HP I have on my Ferrothorn. So that was not a smart play by me. My best play there was to either go into the Milotic and kind of sack it early, or go into the King Gambit, which was a more offensive switch. Very unlikely my opponent clicks Iron Head in that situation. But obviously on the balloon, I'm in a more offensive position and I can force my opponent to make some plays. We body press though, because we do not want my opponent to get the the free substitute. It's also good into a lot of my opponent's team. We body press here on the Rotom, put it low. It's nice and low, so it's less of a threat. We go into our Milotic here. Volt Switch is free, and unfortunately, it does a lot because it is was max special attack. Hadn't had a drop yet. I say it does a lot, 37%, but that's we were already weakened. I decided to drop the Milotic here because I don't. I need all of these mods to win. Basically, this is my best way to revenge. This revenge that if it gets out of hand, which it is weak enough now. I still don't know its speed stat. I wasn't running calcs too, which is my fault. Um, I don't want to risk a speed tie with Gallade. I can revenge kill it very easily with Coco, and then obviously like Gambit fears body press. So I go right out into the Coco. Once again, I don't overpredict. I discharge. I get the kill. Excadrill comes out. Big threat. We U-turn here, and this is where I make the correct play of going into King Gambit. And my opponent substitutes this time. Smart play. And we get the Iron Head, and we see that pops the balloon, and we flinch. That's obviously kind of worst case scenario in that moment. I have to sucker punch to get rid of the sub. This does put us in a good moment to bring out Gallade. We finish off the Excadrill, and then we see the Dracovish come out. Now, at this point, I'm thinking this Dracovish is Sand. Obviously, no Smooth Stone on Tyranitar means that Sand turns are limited, but I'm not sure what this Dracovish set is. I don't know if it's a pivot set to force me to make pivot around with the flip turn Iron Bundle and the Volt Switch on the Rotom to kind of pivot around, get in good positions and band or whatever. I should have scouted for Scarf. So see the Vicious Rend, it hits. It doesn't do a lot of damage, so I know this thing is likely not banded based on that damage alone. We're able to live another hit. So in my mind, I'm thinking, well, this weakens the Dracovish here to where I can easily finish off with one of my two mons. And then it reveals that it's Scarf. It was playing in my head as soon as I went out. I was like, what if this Dracovish is Scarf? Now, I could have potentially scouted with Shadow Sneak. Shadow Sneak, I think, did a max of 20. And so I would have needed to crit at least one of those Shadow Sneaks. I live a Vicious Rend after the Shadow Sneak because it doesn't get the bonus damage for moving first. And I would have needed a crit there, or I would have scouted it earlier with Gallade eating sorry, eating the Vicious Rend, um, dying, going out into Ferrothorn, body pressing after the first Vicious Rend, and I don't know if it does 43%. I know it probably does a decent chunk though, based on the damage it was doing to Rotom, and that would have also potentially given me the win. But the early switch, which I don't really know what my thought process was. I don't know if I was trying to preserve or what, because I knew I needed to weaken. I knew I couldn't one shot Dracovish with Gallade. So my thought was, well, I weaken it, then I bring back in Gallade and I click close combat. Obviously, staying in close combating and then going into Coco or Ferrothorn to finish it off would have done the same thing. I would have gotten the same differential. I don't know why. I guess I was just like, well, no reason to risk the Mega Glade in the situation if I know I'm not going to kill. And unfortunately, that was a mistake it was an unnecessary switch, and it was at the hand of a misplay from earlier by also losing all my HP on Ferrothorn or not losing all my HP, but losing some HP on Ferrothorn from the Excadrill when I should have went King Gambit. So misplays from earlier and just not thinking right clearly in the moment led me up to that point. Pretty sure Coco wasn't faster at that point. It wasn't. So my opponent does unfortunately walk away with the victory. It was a very well played Dracovish. I will say that. Keeping in the back, waiting for your checks to get worn down, primarily the Milotic and the Ferrothorn, letting those mons get worn down. Obviously, the flinch on King Gambit sucked because there's a world where King Gambit's alive as well, and I can sucker punch this thing because it's scarfed. Obviously, that didn't happen. So, unfortunately, like I said, well played to my opponent, keeping the Dracovish in the back, and I just let all my checks get worn down. Basically put Dracovish in a position, and I did not potentially scout for Scarf with Gallade up front. Just click close combat into the Dracovish. Oh, it's Scarf. Cool. Go into Ferrothorn, eat the hit, click body press, kill the Dracovish. No rocks either, which also prevented me from making the Shadow Sneak play. I wasn't able to get rocks up at any point because Ferrothorn kind of was, not in those positions. Also, not getting Leech Seed off on Ferrothorn, so I couldn't recover it. There's a lot of things that went into this play, unfortunately. And it really sucked because I felt like once I had gotten in my, once I had killed the Tyranitar and the Diancie and kind of gotten Gallade in where I knew it was going to be able to kind of finish off my opponent's team, felt like I won. And unfortunately, like I said, the switch was the bad part because if I just let Gallade die, I switch in Ferrothorn, I probably win this match. And then also, like I said, letting my checks get worn down. But well played to my opponent. 100% Snake played that very well, making sure that the checks were eliminated, keeping the Dracovish in the back. Scarf Draco kind of destroyed my team at the end there. So very well played to my opponent. Unfortunately, that we did suffer our first loss in week 4. So obviously, week 5, we're looking for a bounce back, a W, and I will get that video out for you guys soon. Like I said, I am kind of behind, so hopefully I'll try to get these videos out within a week of one another, kind of have a lot of content. But I appreciate you guys stopping by. Stay tuned as we continue with the season, and hopefully we can try to get some more W's this season, and maybe even walk away with a chip. But I appreciate you guys checking this out, and see you guys next time.